The summer heat bore down mercilessly on Silverbend, Colorado, as Sophia Kane stepped off the stagecoach, her gloved hand instinctively rising to adjust the high collar of her dress, ensuring it concealed the jagged scars that wrapped around her neck like an unwanted necklace. It was 1873, 2 years since the fire that had taken her family and marked her forever, and this dusty frontier town was her last hope for a new beginning. The town's main street stretched before her, lined with weathered buildings that had seen their share of harsh seasons and harsher men. Sophia clutched her small valise tightly, ignoring the curious stares of townsfolk who paused their daily routines to assess the newcomer. She had grown accustomed to the stares, though they still stung like salt in an open wound. "Miss Kane? Sophia Kane?" A woman's voice called out, and Sophia turned to see a plump, kind-faced woman hurrying toward her. "I'm Martha Holloway. We exchanged letters about the teaching position." Sophia nodded, offering a small smile. "Yes, thank you for meeting me, Mrs. Holloway. The schoolhouse is just down the way. I've prepared the small room at the back for your accommodations, as we discussed." Martha's eyes flickered momentarily to Sophia's high collar but quickly returned to her face. The children are eager to meet their new teacher. As they walked through town, Sophia felt the weight of dozens of eyes following her. She had hoped that a small frontier town might be different from the city she'd left behind, but curiosity, it seemed, was universal. "Don't mind the staring," Martha said quietly. "News travels fast here, and we haven't had a new schoolteacher in 3 years." Sophia nodded gratefully, though she knew it wasn't just her newness that drew attention. Even with her scars carefully hidden, there was something in the way she carried herself, a guardedness that people sensed. The schoolhouse was a simple one-room building with rows of wooden desks and a larger desk at the front for the teacher. Connected to the back was a small but tidy living space with a bed, a dresser, a small stove, and a washing area concealed by a curtain. "It's perfect," Sophia said, genuinely pleased with the modest accommodations. "School starts Monday," Martha explained. "That gives you 3 days to settle in. The general store has everything you might need, and the owner, Mr. Jensen, extends credit to town employees until payday." After Martha left, Sophia unpacked her few belongings, carefully hanging her high-collared dresses in the small wardrobe. She touched the scarves she'd brought, tools of concealment that had become as essential to her as breathing. The mirror above the dresser reflected her face, still young at 23, with striking green eyes and rich brown hair, but she avoided looking at her reflection for too long. Later that afternoon, Sophia ventured to the general store to purchase supplies. The bell above the door jingled as she entered, and several customers turned to look. She kept her eyes downcast, moving directly to the counter where an older man stood organizing inventory. "Mr. Jensen? I'm Sophia Kane, the new schoolteacher." The man looked up, his weathered face breaking into a welcoming smile. "Miss Kane, welcome to Silverbend. What can I help you with today?" As Sophia listed the items she needed, the store door opened again, and the atmosphere in the room shifted subtly. She sensed rather than saw someone enter, someone whose presence commanded attention without demanding it. "Afternoon, Vaughn," Mr. Jensen called, and Sophia turned slightly to see who had caused the change in the room's energy. A tall man stood in the doorway, removing his hat to reveal dark hair streaked with the dust of the trail. His face was tanned from long days under the sun, with lines at the corners of his eyes that suggested he laughed often, though his expression now was serious. He wore the practical clothing of a cattleman's sturdy pants, a simple shirt with a vest, and well-worn boots. "Mr. Jensen," the man acknowledged with a nod before his eyes met Sophia's. She felt an unexpected jolt at the direct gaze. His eyes were a startling blue against his sun-darkened skin. "Miss Kane, this is Vaughn Delaney," Mr. Jensen introduced, owns the Double D Ranch outside of town. Vaughn, this is our new schoolteacher. Just arrived today. Vaughn Delaney nodded politely. Madam, welcome to Silverbend. Thank you, Mr. Delaney, Sophia replied, instinctively adjusting her collar higher. His eyes followed the movement of her hands, and something flickered across his face, not pity or revulsion. The reactions she'd grown accustomed to, but something she couldn't quite identify. Before she could analyze it further, he turned his attention back to Mr. Jensen. Got that order ready, Harold? While Mr. Jensen gathered Vaughn's supplies, Sophia pretended to study the fabric bolts near the counter, acutely aware of the cowboy's presence. She'd met many men since the fire, but none had made her feel so immediately self-conscious. You rode in from Denver? Vaughn asked unexpectedly. Sophia looked up, surprised he was addressing her. Yes, I taught there for a year. Long journey for a woman traveling alone. She stiffened slightly at his comment. I'm quite capable of managing myself, Mr. Delaney. A hint of a smile touched his lips. Didn't suggest otherwise, Miss Kane. Just making conversation. Mr. Jensen returned with Vaughn's supplies, breaking the moment. As the rancher paid and gathered his items, he nodded once more to Sophia. Silverbend's lucky to have a new teacher. Town needs educated children. With that, he replaced his hat and departed, leaving Sophia with the strange feeling that she'd just experienced something significant, though she couldn't have explained why. The weekend passed quickly as Sophia prepared lessons and familiarized herself with the town. Sunday morning found her sitting in the back pew of the small church, listening to Reverend Miller's sermon while trying to ignore the occasional glances from the congregation. After the service, she was introduced to several families whose children would be her students. Most were welcoming, though she noticed how their eyes sometimes lingered on her high collar or the edges of scarring visible near her jawline when she turned her head a certain way. Miss Kane, a woman's voice called as Sophia was preparing to leave. She turned to see a young woman about her age approaching with a warm smile. I'm Lily Delaney, Vaughn's sister. I wanted to introduce myself properly. It's nice to meet you, Sophia replied, surprised by the connection. I help my brother run the ranch, Lily explained. But I also take care of the accounts for several businesses in town, including the school. We'll be working together occasionally. There was something refreshingly direct about Lily that Sophia appreciated. Unlike others, she maintained eye contact without letting her gaze wander to Sophia's neck or jawline. Will you join us for Sunday dinner? Lily asked. Martha Holloway will be there and the Reverend. We often host newcomers to welcome them properly. Before Sophia could formulate a polite refusal, Martha appeared beside them. Oh, you must come, Sophia. The Delaney Ranch is beautiful, and Lily is the finest cook in the county. Trapped by courtesy, Sophia agreed, and an hour later found herself in a wagon beside Martha, traveling the 3 miles to the Double D Ranch. As they crested a small rise, the property came into view, a large main house built of sturdy logs and stone, several outbuildings, corrals with horses, and beyond, vast grasslands where cattle grazed. Vaughn built most of it himself, Martha explained. Came here 10 years ago with nothing but determination and a talent with cattle. Now he's one of the most successful ranchers in the territory. The wagon pulled up to the house, and Sophia saw Vaughn himself emerge from the barn, wiping his hands on a cloth. He nodded in greeting as he approached. Ladies, welcome, he said, helping Martha down from the wagon before turning to offer his hand to Sophia. She hesitated briefly before placing her gloved hand in his. His grip was firm and steady as he assisted her down, and for a moment, they stood closer than propriety might dictate. His blue eyes meeting hers with that same unreadable expression she'd noticed in the store. Thank you for the invitation, Mr. Delaney, she said, withdrawing her hand perhaps too quickly. Vaughn, he corrected. We're not much for formalities out here. Inside, the ranch house was surprisingly comfortable and well-appointed. The main room featured a large stone fireplace, sturdy furniture upholstered in warm fabrics, and bookshelves filled with volumes that immediately caught Sophia's attention. You enjoy reading? Lily asked, noticing Sophia's interest. Very much, Sophia admitted. I didn't expect to find such a library in a ranch house. That's Vaughn's doing, Lily said with obvious affection for her brother. He reads everything he can get his hands on. Says a man's mind needs exercise as much as his body. Dinner was a pleasant affair, with conversation flowing easily among the guests. Sophia found herself relaxing slightly, though she remained conscious of her scars and the high collar that concealed most of them. Several times, she caught Vaughn watching her with that same enigmatic expression, but he never stared rudely or asked intrusive questions. As the meal concluded, Reverend Miller suggested a walk to enjoy the fine weather. Lily and Martha readily agreed, but Sophia hesitated, conscious that the afternoon sun might make her warm enough to regret her high collar and long sleeves. Perhaps Miss Kane would like to see the library properly, Vaughn suggested unexpectedly. I have some books on local history that might interest a teacher. Grateful for the reprieve, Sophia accepted the alternative. As the others departed for their walk, she found herself alone with Vaughn in the main room, suddenly uncertain. You don't care for the heat, he observed, gesturing for her to sit in one of the comfortable chairs near the unlit fireplace. No, she admitted. I find it uncomfortable. He nodded, not pressing further, and moved to the bookshelves. These might be useful for your lessons, he said, selecting several volumes. Accounts of the region's settlement, maps, natural history. As he handed her the books, their fingers brushed, and Sophia felt that same unexpected jolt she'd experienced in the store. She quickly focused her attention on the books, opening one to a detailed map of the Colorado Territory. How long have you been teaching? Vaughn asked, settling into the chair opposite hers. Formally, just the past year in Denver, she replied. Before that, I tutored children in Boston. Long way from Boston to Silverbend. Sophia closed the book, meeting his gaze directly. Yes, well, sometimes one needs distance. From what happened? He asked quietly. Her hand instinctively went to her collar. You know, then? Small towns talk, he acknowledged. Martha mentioned you survived a fire, lost your family. Sophia stiffened. I prefer not to discuss it. Of course. He leaned forward slightly. But if you don't mind my saying so, Miss Kane, you have nothing to hide here. Frontier folk understand survival and its costs. Something in his tone made her look at him more carefully. You speak as if from experience, Mr. Delaney. Vaughn, he corrected again, then rolled up his left sleeve to reveal a forearm marked with burn scars, similar to her own though less extensive. Mining accident when I was 19. Trapped for hours. Lost 3 friends. Sophia stared at the scars, then met his eyes with new understanding. I'm sorry. Don't be. They remind me to live well for those who can't. He rolled his sleeve down again. Your scars are your own business, Miss Kane, but they're nothing to be ashamed of in Silverbend. Before she could respond, the door opened, and the walking party returned, bringing with them laughter and conversation that ended the private moment. Throughout the remainder of the afternoon, Sophia found herself watching Vaughn with new interest, noting the easy way he interacted with everyone, the respect he commanded without demanding it, and the quiet intelligence behind his comments. As they prepared to depart, Vaughn handed Sophia a small parcel. The books we discussed, he explained. You're welcome to borrow them as long as you need. Thank you, she said, genuinely touched by the gesture. And Miss Kane, he added quietly as he helped her into the wagon. My door is always open if you need anything. Silverbend looks after its own. The first day of school arrived, bringing with it 27 students ranging from 6 to 16 years of age. Sophia stood at her desk, hands clasped to hide their trembling as she surveyed the curious young faces before her. "Good morning," she began. "I am Miss Kane, and I will be your teacher. We have much to learn together. But first, I would like to learn about you." The morning progressed smoothly as Sophia assessed her students' knowledge levels and began organizing them into appropriate groups for instruction. The children seemed receptive and respectful, and she began to relax into her role. During the lunch break, as the children ate in the schoolyard, Sophia remained at her desk organizing her afternoon lessons. The sound of laughter drew her attention to the window, where she saw several of the older girls huddled together, occasionally glancing toward the schoolhouse. Sophia tried to ignore them, but when the girls returned to the classroom, she overheard whispered comments. "My ma says she's hiding something awful under that collar. Probably why she came all the way out here. Nobody wanted her back east. Johnny's older brother said she probably got those scars from doing something wicked." Sophia cleared her throat loudly, and the girls fell silent, looking embarrassed at being caught gossiping. She continued with the afternoon lessons as if she hadn't heard, but their words lodged in her heart like splinters. At the end of the day, as she stood on the schoolhouse steps watching the last students depart, she noticed a familiar figure on horseback approaching. Vaughn Delaney tipped his hat as he drew near. "Miss Kane, how was your first day?" "Educational," she replied with a small smile. "For me as much as the students, I suspect." He dismounted, leading his horse closer. "I was heading back from town and thought I'd check if you needed anything." She was about to assure him she was fine when the group of gossiping girls passed by, falling silent at the sight of Vaughn but giggling once they thought they were out of earshot. Something in Sophia's expression must have revealed her distress, for Vaughn's eyes narrowed slightly as he watched the girls depart. "Children can be unkind without meaning to be," he said carefully. "They're simply curious," Sophia replied, though her voice lacked conviction. "It's natural. Curiosity isn't an excuse for cruelty," Vaughn countered. "Would you like me to speak with their parents?" "No," she said quickly. "That would only make things worse. I've dealt with this before. It will pass once the novelty wears off." He studied her face for a moment, then nodded. "As you wish, but the offer stands." As the weeks passed, Sophia settled into life in Silverbend. Her students responded well to her teaching methods, and most of the parents expressed satisfaction with their children's progress. The whispers and stares gradually lessened, though they never entirely disappeared. Vaughn became a regular visitor to the schoolhouse, often stopping by with books he thought might interest her or news from the outlying ranches. Their conversations grew longer and more personal, though Sophia maintained a careful distance, unwilling to risk her heart or face inevitable rejection when he saw the full extent of her scars. One warm October afternoon, Sophia dismissed her students early so she could attend the town's harvest festival. She changed into her best dress, a deep green that complemented her eyes, and carefully arranged a silk scarf around her neck to conceal her scars while providing some relief from the high collars she usually wore. The town square had been transformed with tables of food, bunting, and a small area cleared for dancing. A fiddle player and a man with a banjo provided lively music as townsfolk gathered to celebrate the successful harvest. Sophia made her way through the crowd, exchanging greetings with parents and students. She was standing near the refreshment table when she overheard a conversation between two women she recognized as mothers of her older students. "She seems competent enough as a teacher," one woman said, "but there's something not right about a woman who hides herself away like that. My Becky says she never removes that high collar, even on the hottest days," the other replied. "What kind of example is that for young girls?" vanity and secrecy. Or shame, the first woman added. Whatever she's hiding must be truly dreadful. Sophia set down her cup of punch, her appetite for both food and celebration suddenly gone. She turned to leave the festival, only to find herself face to face with Vaughn, who had clearly overheard the conversation as well, judging by the thunderous expression on his face. "Miss Kane," he said, his voice controlled but tight with anger. "Would you honor me with a dance?" She shook her head slightly. "I don't think—" "Please," he interrupted, his blue eyes intent on hers. "I'd consider it a personal favor." Understanding that he was offering her a way to hold her head high, Sophia placed her hand in his. "One dance, Mr. Delaney." He led her to the dancing area, where several couples were already moving to the music. As they joined the dance, Sophia was acutely aware of the stares they attracted the mysterious scarred schoolteacher and the respected rancher. "You didn't have to do this," she said quietly as they moved through the steps of the dance. "I know," he replied, his hand warm and steady at her waist. "I wanted to." "Why?" The question escaped before she could stop it. His eyes held hers, serious and sincere. "Because you deserve to be seen, Sophia. Not your scars or your past, but you." The use of her given name sent an unexpected warmth through her, and for a moment, she allowed herself to simply enjoy the dance and the feeling of being treated as a woman, not an object of curiosity or pity. As the music ended, Vaughn escorted her from the dance floor, his hand still holding hers. "Would you like to walk? It's a beautiful evening." She hesitated, then nodded. They made their way to the edge of town, where a small creek provided a peaceful retreat from the festival noise. As they walked along its banks, Sophia found herself relaxing in Vaughn's company. "You've changed things here," he said unexpectedly. "What do you mean?" "The school. The children are learning more than just reading and sums. They're learning to think." He glanced at her with genuine admiration. "That's a rare gift in a teacher." "Thank you," she said, touched by his observation. "Teaching is the one thing that has always made sense to me, even after everything changed." They walked in comfortable silence for a moment before he spoke again. "Will you tell me about the fire?" Sophia stopped walking, her breath catching in her throat. "Why would you want to know about that?" "Because I want to know you," he said simply. "All of you, not just the parts you show to the world." Something in his directness, in the way he looked at her as if nothing she could say would change his opinion, broke through the walls she'd built around herself. "It was 2 years ago," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "My parents' home in Boston. I was reading late in my room when I smelled the smoke. By the time I realized what was happening, the staircase was already engulfed." Vaughn listened silently as she recounted how she tried to reach her parents' room, how the burning beams had fallen, trapping her, how she'd eventually escaped through a window but not before the flames had scarred her neck, chest, and left shoulder. "My parents and younger brother didn't survive," she concluded, her eyes fixed on the creek's flowing water. "The doctor said I was lucky, but I didn't feel lucky. I felt marked. As if everyone could see my failure to save them written on my skin." "That's why you hide the scars," Vaughn said, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Yes, and because I grew tired of the stares, the whispers, the questions. In Boston, I became known as that poor scarred Kane girl. Even in Denver, once people knew, they treated me differently." She touched her scarf unconsciously. "I came to Silverbend hoping for a fresh start, but some things follow you no matter how far you run." Vaughn was quiet for a long moment, then said, "My sister nearly died when we were younger. Typhoid. I watched her waste away for weeks, not knowing if she'd wake up each morning. When she finally recovered, she was different, thinner, weaker, her beautiful hair gone. He looked at Sophia directly. The first time she went into town after her illness, she overheard some boys laughing about how she looked like a scarecrow. She cried for hours afterward. "I'm sorry," Sophia said, understanding the parallel he was drawing. "I told her something that day that I've never forgotten. I said, 'Lily, those scars, that weakness you feel, they're not signs of what was lost. They're proof of what you survived. They're beautiful because they mean you're still here.'" His voice softened. "Your scars are proof of your beauty too, Sophia. They show your courage, your resilience." Tears filled her eyes at his words, and she turned away slightly to compose herself. "Not everyone sees them that way." "Then they're not worth your concern," he said firmly. "The people who matter will see you for who you are, not the marks on your skin." As they walked back toward town, something shifted between them, a new understanding, a deeper connection. When they reached the schoolhouse, Vaughn hesitated before saying goodnight. "There's a school board meeting next week," he said. "As a major taxpayer in the county, I usually attend. Would you allow me to escort you?" Sophia found herself smiling genuinely. "I would like that very much." Over the following weeks, Vaughn became a constant presence in Sophia's life. They attended community events together, spent Sunday afternoons discussing books at his ranch, and gradually, Sophia found herself opening up to him in ways she hadn't with anyone since the fire. As October gave way to November, the weather turned colder, and preparations began for Thanksgiving celebrations. The school was to host a special program where students would perform recitations and songs for their families, followed by a community dinner. The night before the program, Sophia stayed late at the schoolhouse, finalizing preparations. Lost in concentration, she didn't hear the door open until a voice startled her. Working too hard, as usual, she looked up to find Vaughn standing in the doorway, holding a covered basket. "I thought you might have skipped dinner," he explained, setting the basket on her desk. "Lily sent some of her stew and biscuits." "That was very thoughtful," Sophia said, suddenly aware of how hungry she was. "Would you join me? There's plenty here." They shared the meal at her desk, discussing the next day's program and laughing over the children's rehearsal mishaps. As they finished eating, Vaughn grew unexpectedly serious. "There's something I need to tell you, Sophia." Her heart quickened at his tone. "What is it?" "I've been offered a position on the Territorial Governor's Agricultural Commission. It would mean traveling to Denver frequently, helping establish policies for ranching and farming throughout Colorado." "That's a great honor," she said, trying to mask her disappointment at the thought of seeing him less often. "You should accept." "I'm considering it," he said, watching her carefully. "But there are factors keeping me here in Silverbend that matter more than any position." The intensity in his blue eyes made her breath catch. "Factors. One in particular," he said quietly. "A schoolteacher who's become very important to me." Before she could respond, the schoolhouse door burst open, and one of her young students, Tommy Jensen, rushed in. "Miss Kane, there's a fire at the livery stable. Pa says everyone needs to help." They hurried outside to see flames already engulfing the wooden structure where the town's horses were kept. Men formed a bucket brigade from the town well, while others worked to free the panicked horses from their stalls. Without hesitation, Vaughn joined the firefighting efforts, leaving Sophia to help organize the women who were bringing water and caring for those overcome by smoke. For 2 hours, the town battled the blaze until finally it was contained. The livery stable destroyed, but the surrounding buildings saved. In the aftermath, as people began to disperse, Sophia searched for Vaughn among the soot-covered men. She found him sitting on a barrel behind the general store, allowing the town's doctor to bandage a burn on his forearm. "It's nothing serious," he assured her when he saw her worried expression. "Just a minor burn." The doctor finished his work and moved on to other injured townspeople, leaving them alone. Sophia sat beside Vaughn, gently taking his injured arm in her hands. "You could have been killed," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "It would take more than a stable fire to keep me from what matters," he replied, his eyes holding hers. "Sophia, seeing those flames tonight, it made me realize how precious time is, how quickly everything can change." He took her hand in his uninjured one. "I've been wanting to tell you for weeks now. I love you. Your intelligence, your kindness, your strength, everything about you. I don't want to wait any longer to ask if you might someday consider becoming my wife." Sophia stared at him, her heart pounding. "Vaughn, you don't know what you're asking. My scars, they're extensive. More than you've seen. I know exactly what I'm asking," he interrupted gently. "And I know enough about scars, both the ones you can see and the ones you can't, to understand they're part of who you are. But they don't define you, and they certainly don't diminish my feelings for you." Tears filled her eyes. "I'm afraid," she admitted, "not just of rejection, but of hoping again, of believing I could have a normal life, a family." "Fear is natural," he said, reaching up to touch her cheek. "But so is love. And what I feel for you is strong enough to face whatever comes." In that moment, with the scent of smoke still heavy in the air and the town slowly recovering around them, Sophia made a decision. Slowly, she unwound the scarf from her neck, revealing the network of scars that spread across her skin. "This is who I am," she said quietly, her voice steady despite her fear. "This is what was left after the fire." Vaughn looked at her scars, then met her eyes with unwavering affection. "And you are beautiful, Sophia Kane. These marks are proof of your courage, your survival. They're part of your beauty, not a diminishment of it." He leaned forward and, with infinite gentleness, pressed his lips to the scarred skin at the base of her throat. "I love all of you," he whispered against her skin. "Every part. And I always will." Tears spilled down Sophia's cheeks as years of shame and hiding began to melt away under his acceptance. "I love you too," she said, her voice breaking. "And yes, I will marry you." The Thanksgiving program the next day proceeded despite the previous night's fire, the community coming together in a spirit of gratitude for what had been saved rather than mourning what was lost. Sophia stood before the assembled townspeople, her students performing beautifully despite limited rehearsal time. For the first time since arriving in Silverbend, she wore a dress with a modest neckline that didn't completely hide her scars. There were a few whispers and stares, but they mattered less than the proud smile Vaughn gave her from his seat in the front row, or the way Lily squeezed her hand in support, or how Martha Holloway loudly told anyone who would listen that their schoolteacher was the bravest woman she knew. After the program, as the community gathered for the Thanksgiving meal, Vaughn publicly announced their engagement. To Sophia's surprise, the news was met with genuine congratulations and warm wishes, even from those who had once whispered behind her back. "See," Vaughn said quietly as they accepted the community's good wishes. "The people who matter see you for who you truly are." Later that evening, as they walked hand in hand under a sky brilliant with stars, Sophia stopped to look up at the man who had helped her reclaim not just her heart, but her sense of self-worth. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "when I came to Silverbend, I was looking for a place to hide. Instead, I found a place to heal." Vaughn smiled, pulling her close. "And I found the woman I've been waiting for my entire life." As his lips met hers in a tender kiss, Sophia knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them openly and honestly, no longer hiding from the world or herself. Her scars would always be part of her story, but now they were a chapter rather than the entire book. In this small frontier town, she had found not just a new beginning, but a future brighter than she had dared to dream, one filled with love, acceptance, and the courage to be seen for all that she was.